Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Girl Dad. I'm Abigail Frechette,
And I'm Peter Frechette.
and I would highly recommend that if you have never gone and watched one of our YouTube videos before, that this maybe is the first one you go and check out because
Okay.
we have fully committed to
I'm coming to you
Halloween.
live from Bedrock.
We've
Yabba
gone,
dabba doo!
we're full father-daughter duoing.
Absolutely. Really scored here today, for sure.
Yeah, Dad is Fred Flintstone, and I am Pebbles.
Pebbles. Love Pebbles. There you go. Looks good.
Thank
Looks
you.
very good.
Thank you. Um,
I did
yeah, this is a good.
the Bedrock attempt was a last minute decision, and I've never used a Zoom background before. And I couldn't figure out how to just make my own. So I just I did an AI bedrock, and this is what came up. So that's what we're
I
doing.
was I was a little curious because that looks a little more realistic, I think, than
It is
the
bedrock,
bedrock.
though. It is certainly bedrock. I
Sure.
came up with two choices. This is the one I went with. So,
I like it. I have some Charlie Brown
oh, look at that. Oh, we got some Halloween
trick-or-treating.
stuff going. I
Yeah,
saw a
yeah.
bat coming through there.
Yeah, they're all their little ghosties. They're just walking
Why would we be doing that? Why are we looking so silly? Why? I don't get
because
it.
it's Halloween.
Happy Halloween! Oh,
Happy
but of course, we could not do a Girl Dad episode without Abby telling us about what Halloween is. This
Yeah,
is
I
going to
had
be
to make it
so
happy.
educational.
No, this is actually I actually found this episode like one of the most interesting to research because some of this stuff I didn't totally know. Like I feel like a lot of this stuff is stuff that people are gonna know like some of the they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I knew like the first little bit of that," and then I'm gonna go into something else and they'll be like, "Wait, that's like way more in depth
And
than."
that is surprising, given the knowledgeable audience that we do have, and
Yeah,
they're really good on
absolutely.
most subjects. So if you can stump them, you've really got it done. Of course, the extent of my knowledge is uh, All Hallows Eve and the Great Pumpkin. So I think that's
Okay.
about it for me.
I mean that All Hallows Eve, we'll start there. How about that?
All right.
So, a huge influence on Halloween, of course, is All Hallows Eve, which is a Christian holiday. And what do you know about an Eve? Do we have any other Christian Eves that you can think of?
Well, there's Christmas Eve,
Well, yeah. So what
and
is that?
it's the night before Christmas.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
So
Mhm.
so uh so an eve is the night before something. Um
Or of course, the first woman, but that's a different.
well that's a different Eve. She's not involved here.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, this has
Interesting.
nothing to do.
I'd really like to do some research as to why those two things, Eve, evening.
I don't know. I didn't
Oh, I
go
know.
into that. We
Okay.
don't need to get into the misogyny of that
Okay.
story.
No worries.
Um But yeah, so an eve is the term for like the night before something, and Halloween comes is like the shortened version of like Hallows Eve being like combined and condensed down. So it's the evening before the Christian holy days of All Hallows Day, which is also known as All Saints Day,
Oh,
which
interesting.
is November 1st, and All Souls Day, which is November 2nd. So this is a time when Western Christians honor all saints and pray for recently departed souls who have yet to reach heaven. So in like kind of more modern folk like mythology, I think that the closest thing we could like relate that to is kind of like ghosts. There's a lot of like ghost stories that talk about how like um the reason ghosts exist is because they still have like something left on Earth to like deal with. And
Mm,
that's why they haven't like reached afterlife yet. Like it's a
mm.
soul that still has something to deal with in the like the human world.
It's interesting in I'm certainly not a scholar, but I believe in Native American tradition, the uh, with the Perseid meteor shower in August, that is when the souls of the departed get transported to heaven, or whatever
Oh,
their version of heaven was at the time.
okay. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that there's within like different kind of belief systems or religious practices that there would be different days or different, practices that this would happen. Um, it's also believed that for Christians, there's kind of two reasons why this happens in November. One is a practical reason is that fall is a time when nature dies. So nature dying, mimics the practice of like
Hmm.
souls dying, so it kind of like makes sense in that way. The other one is that, and this is actually kind of similar to the reason why we celebrate Christmas when we celebrate Christmas, because it's like, oh, it's Jesus' birthday, but actually Jesus, like they figured out wasn't born on Christmas, and like it's because there was a Roman holiday that was celebrated at that time already, so they just moved it to like correspond with that. And it's believed that this was possibly, again, there's like speculative research going on here, but from what I gathered, and I didn't go super deep into this, but there was some disease happening in Rome that prevented a lot of people from traveling there at a certain time, and they didn't want people to go there in like the late summer. So they like made them wait, and that's why this happened like later in the year. So that's another reason why this happens in like November, like October, November. But those are both possible reasons why this happens then. Um, and we'll get into some other non-Christian reasons why it happens when it happens, but this is the Christian section, if you can tell. Um, so by the end of the 12th century, the celebration had become one of the holy days of obligation requiring church attendance in Western Christianity. Um, it involves such traditions as ringing church bells for souls in purgatory, and it was also customary for criers dressed in black to parade the streets, ringing a bell of mournful sound and calling on all good Christians to remember the poor souls. So, this is the first time we see kind of anything resembling like any
The gr-
sort of,
the Grim Reaper?
yeah, like any sort of like darker
Hmm.
tradition
Hmm.
parade surrounding Halloween.
Hmm.
Um, moving forward, I think you'll be a little surprised. There's a lot of things that match our modern day traditions of Halloween that started really early on in Christian culture. For example, trick-or-treating. In parts of England, Wales, Flanders, Bavaria, and Austria, a custom dates back at least as far as the 15th century of baking and sharing soul cakes for all christened souls. So these were similar to like they were kind of like they were more like a loaf of bread with like a cross on it, but they were like a sweeter bread. Um and people would give them to the poor, children. You would go door to door handing them out, and it was kind of like offer you were like giving the cakes in exchange for people like praying. So it was like I give you a cake and you pray for like my departed family members and things like that. So it's kind of like an exchange of prayer, but it's also like an exchange of goodwill. Um, and it's like it tended to be like a mutual exchange kind of thing. Like, um, if you're like it's a little more like caroling too, like you would go door to door like in a group kind of
Oh,
thing. But
interesting.
yeah, like with but I mean it's like trick or treating. Like you're going
Yeah,
door to
which is what
door. Yeah.
in a group, which a
Yeah,
lot of people do now. So yeah, that
exactly.
makes sense.
Also fun little tidbit, this is mentioned by Shakespeare in The Two Gentlemen of Verona, which was written sometime around like the 1590s. And I believe it was called like souling, which is an interesting term.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna
Not to be
refer to
confused
it.
with ghosting, of course.
No, 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 no. A little different there, but I'm gonna refer to it as souling from now on, just so you're aware of
That's
that.
fun. Okay.
But while souling, something else that these people would do was they would carry lanterns made of hollowed out turnips.
Oh.
Um,
Oh,
and these
interesting.
turnips were meant to represent the souls of the dead. Um,
Huh.
Eventually there was kind of like this belief that like jack-o'-lanterns in general were used to ward off evil spirits. There was a lot of different practices kind of like throughout different locations in Europe, that candles were used for different purposes, kind of either to ward off evil spirits or to guide spirits to different locations. So some places you had candles guiding spirits to like graves of like if like your mom passed away before your dad passed away, like the candles would guide the dad to the mom's grave, so like they would lie together kind of thing. Or but then in other situations it would be like guiding them back to their family. um And then, but then in other places, the jack-o'-lanterns, you would put the candles in like a gourd of some type, so either a turnip or another vegetable, sometimes like a I don't know, what are other gourds? Like a squash?
Squash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that would be more of like a oh,
Zucchini's probably a
come
little
to this
small.
house kind of thing. Because there was also this belief that like um there were like vengeful spirits, because like I said it's kind of like this, there's kind of so overall this period of like the hallowed days, right, this 3-day period, um it's kind of this like this almost like thinning veil, right, where it's like the spirits are more connected to our world than they are in a
Normally.
normal set.
Okay. All right.
And so,
It's about the time the Great Pumpkin comes.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Anyway.
Um, but so that means like you have more of a likelihood of connecting with loved ones that you lost, but there's also a likelihood that like vengeful spirits who are like have like still like I don't know, like debts to pay on Earth or something like that are still like lurking as well, right? So this is where costumes also come into play,
Oh my.
because this is really linked to
During souling?
vengeful spirits. Not necessarily during souling, but during this whole like period and
Okay.
specifically on All Hallows Eve. um because
To
All
try
Hallows
to,
Eve provided like the last chance for the dead to gain vengeance on their enemies before like moving to the next world. And so in order to be like not recognized by a soul that might be seeking vengeance on you, people would wear masks and costumes.
oh my God,
And
that's
like
fascinating.
and there's also like because of circumstances, a lot of the poor churches wouldn't have necessarily like the means to have all of their saints because this is also a holiday that's celebrating all the saints too. So they wouldn't necessarily have like idols to worship all their saints. So they'd also have costumes for different like um people to dress up as the saints to like worship them. So that was like a part of it as well. So I thought that was really interesting because I feel like the trick or treating and like the jack-o'-lanterns, those two things I feel like make a little more sense to me, but I was shocked with the costumes a little bit. I was like, wow, that's crazy that that like
Yeah,
evolved to
that's really cool.
I
That's
think that
very
that's so
interesting.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um and along those same lines, there another thing that I think is cool is there was a kind of a I guess like a scary story that was told that's called the Dance Macabre, which is translated to the Dance of Death. And this was I believe it was specifically like a more Eastern European tradition, but it was definitely like throughout all of Europe was like a concept that was spoken about. And this was basically that people would see um in graveyards souls of the dead like dancing and
Ooh.
like tell stories of this and like it was believed like this was something that happened on All Hallows Eve and like that was just something that you saw. And I think that's also just like a an interesting concept. And I just wanted to point that out because I think that that's kind of fun
It's
that
giving me
like
very much some Haunted Mansion vibes from
yeah,
Disney
yeah, yeah,
World, but I think there's some
for
dancing
sure.
going on in the cemetery in
Oh,
there.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
Um, but I don't know, I think that's one of those things where it's like someone says a story and then it's like I don't like sensationalized kind of, and then other people are like, "Oh, maybe I did see that." Like, like it
Mm.
just but I don't
Power of
think
suggestion.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just think it's really cool that this stuff that I never would have imagined that the things that we do today have such historic roots, and I just assumed it was probably something put on by the candy companies or something
Mhm.
to get people to buy candy.
No,
Uh,
absolutely. And I think it's interesting too because it's also I mean, everything I've talked about so far, these are all very linked to Western Christianity in
mhm.
specifically Europe. Definitely more towards the Anglo-Saxon kind of European area
Sure.
towards the end. And I will say a lot of these practices kind of were I get I guess banned when certain religious groups started becoming more prominent, the Puritans weren't into this stuff, as you can
I
imagine.
was
I
going to
mean, like,
say, how much did
yeah,
Halloween come
I
into
think I
the
think you
early?
can imagine for sure, like, just based on historical knowledge, groups that wouldn't be into like this stuff would, with more like kind of stringent religious views, would kind of turn their nose up at this stuff. The the English like Reformation movement, which I think was in like the 1600s, I want to say, definitely like put the kibosh on a lot of this stuff. That's not to say it wasn't still like happening elsewhere, and it's not to say it wasn't still happening there, just was happening less like in
Yeah.
public. Um, but
And I'm sure
I
you,
think
when you
it
had
does
the,
like change the way it flows as like widely, and we're gonna get into that because I think that's also very interesting when you look at the state of like how Halloween operates in the world today. Um, but before we do that, unless you have something you want to say.
no, no.
But before we do that, I do just want to touch really quickly on some of the Gaelic folk influences. And before we do this, I really, really want to apologize because I am going to pronounce so many of these words entirely wrong, and I'm so sorry. I tried to look them up beforehand on how to pronounce them, and I'm going to get them wrong. Um
Well, I'm sure that the people who listen to this, the very highly intelligent people who listen to this podcast, will be happy to share the correct pronunciations at girldadpcast@gmail.com. So we'll look
Please
forward
do.
to getting those
Yeah.
phonetic pronunciations from you. Thank you so
Um
much.
But I think this is cool because obviously the Gaelic and the Christian, there was overlap in a lot of these areas, so we're gonna have that kind of happening. But I think it's interesting too because like you said at the beginning, these practices are happening across the world in different belief systems, um just organically, right? Like the Native
Well,
Americans were thought like doing that on their own. Like,
well, I just think it's
here.
kind of human nature
Of course.
um, to think about, okay, well, this happened, so let's put a story behind it.
Yeah,
And there's always this mythology that develops, and for it to be similar is not really that surprising.
absolutely. But what is really interesting is that in the Gaelic calendar, it's almost exactly the same day. And I do think that's interesting. And that makes me wonder if that was actually one of the influences that just hasn't been recorded on why, like one of those kind of like maybe that had some influence over it, but we don't like know that because it wasn't ever really like talked about or it wasn't ever written down or recorded anywhere just because it wasn't like, I don't know, like because in a lot of ways, like Gaelic folk culture was seen as like pagan ritual and seen as kind of witchcrafty and really, I mean, it had like a negative reputation towards it. It was seen poorly toward from like a Christian perspective. So but I do wonder if that is kind of an influence on some of this, but I do just want to touch on some of the things that are similar to what we've been talking about because I think it's a really interesting culture. And there's also, if anyone's interested in Gaelic folk culture, there's some really great movies out there that are animated and the style is beautiful. I'm forgetting the name of them, but if you Google Gaelic folk animated movies, you can find them really easily. This is a horrible plug.
That was
Um,
really good. That was
but
really
I promise
solid.
you can find them really easily.
I'll
Um,
try to put them in the show notes so that people don't have to work too hard,
yeah,
but I'm
sorry
not
guys.
really good at that either. So
I can send them to dad. Um, okay, first bad pronunciation. Here we go. Samhain is one of the quarter days in the medieval Gaelic calendar. It marks the end of harvest season and the beginning of winter or the darker half of the year. It is considered to be a liminal time when the boundary between our world and the other world is thinned. So that's kind of similar to like spirit world, what we were talking about before a little bit, right? So this meant the
Good luck.
Aussie or the spirits or fairies could more easily come into this world and were particularly active. So again, this is kind of like a similar concept of like it's a time of the year where there's a thinning of a spirit world to our world, and there's a magical thing that happens, and whether it's souls of the dead or souls of another being that has different powers that we don't totally understand, things happen and there's mischief and there's pranks that happen and we dress up in fun costumes and we have fires. And I mean they talk about all these kind of like fun games that they would play, like they would do apple bobbing and like
Oh my.
yeah, and like it just sounds like kind of the the perfect version of like I don't like I don't know how to say this correctly, but like the perfect version of um if you've ever imagined like going to a Renaissance fair and it being like Halloween at a Renaissance fair, like I feel like, and there being like fairies everywhere and it just being like fun. Like I feel like that's what this was kind of, because it just feels like very silly and like sweet, but also kind of spooky and like they're
Halloween.
people are in costumes and yeah, and they're I mean they were doing kind of like they were really into like divination and they especially at this specific festival like it was a lot of things regarding like death and dream interpretations. They did something where they you pour egg whites into water and you can learn something about your future. I don't really
Like
understand that
palm reading or
concept, but
tea
it means
leaves.
something. Yeah. Um
I
There's
am
also
curious.
like a lot of stuff to do with like fire and um like the cleansing power of fire. So it was which I think actually there might be some links related to the way like harvest season works and the fires work of like cleansing the ground. Um and like
That makes sense.
the kind of symbolism of that during the festival, but then the actual practice of doing that that like actual like farmers would have used.
Hmm.
Um but
I'm
yeah, it's
curious if the quarter days that you talked about at the beginning
mhm.
in any way line up with the equinox that we have today. So if it was around the time of the autumnal equinox, um,
I
it's
mean, yeah, they're seasonal if that
yeah,
yeah, so I imagine they are fairly close to they're 3 months apart. They're close to the yeah, they'd be close to the two solstices and the two equinoxes. So I'd imagine
yeah,
they'd fall
yeah. I
fairly.
mean, it would make sense. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily fall with the end of October, but end of harvest season makes a little bit of sense. And if I think probably the equinox is the time, if I'm not mistaken, that the daylight is the same as darkness. And it's after the autumnal equinox that the days get have more darkness than daylight. I don't know that to be true. I kind of might be making that, but it seems like it makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'm not, I don't,
But you know me, just trying to get a
not.
few words in. So
No, you're good. Um, but some similar kind of things to the Christianity that were happening also is that there were practices that were specifically for the souls of the dead. So there was kind of like a lot of concepts relating to like hospitality related to the souls of the dead. So like candles being lit to indicate that like you had vacancy in your home to offer space for the souls of the dead. You would leave out food, like a meal for a soul. You would kind of like, if you were playing a game, you might like deal a place for a soul. Like there, like things like that. Like it would be um very much as if there were other people there that you just couldn't see, kind of. Which I think is interesting that they had these kind of other people happening, and it's an interesting concept that, to me, that specifically at this time of the year you have these two groups of people who in practice are celebrating this very differently in a lot of ways, in terms of like one, I mean, they're not celebrating theoretically very differently, but like one is looking really far down at the other and being like, "Oh, you're such like pagans and witchcraft," and like, "Oh, that's not, we don't believe in that. Like that's gross." And then the other, but they're doing very similar things and their kind of belief system is very similar. And to me, it's really interesting these things are happening like simultaneously too. Um, but
the
yeah,
other thing that I don't think that, and maybe I just missed it as we were talking. Um, did you talk at all about Day of the Dead in Mexico?
I haven't, no.
Just because that was, I remember you guys in elementary school doing um, Day of the Dead sort of presentations for, and I couldn't remember when it was. So as you were speaking, I looked it up, and it's November 1st and 2nd. So
Mhm.
it's all part of the same thing, and they came to Mexico
Yeah,
from Spain. Um, so all of this stuff is just getting transported around the world. And I think you're right. I think the Gaelic and the Christian are probably much more similar than they dare to admit.
absolutely. Um,
Sorry, didn't mean to
so
interrupt, but
no, you're good. There's another, this part is, I mean, I think that the Day of the Dead is interesting. There's a lot of practices there that I think we can see kind of um translate to even more like modern. Like you kind of see them almost as transitional things where they kind of brought in more color and like what's the right word for it? Like not celebration, because I feel like there was a bit of celebration in all of this before. Like, but there's like the decorativeness and the of the candy skulls, right? That was like a thing that was that they brought to it, right? Um and then like making the jack-o'-lanterns now in our culture. Um but I think like you see that as like a transition almost of like going from something more simple of like you're doing something more within the, like you're making a sweet cake that has a cross on it. Now you're making a candy skull that's like decorated more like specifically, and you're making a more specific thing like a what is it called? What's the
I'm not sure where you're going. I'm
I don't,
sorry.
that's what is it called when you like are it's not worshiping, but you're making something for someone, like dedicating
Oh, I know what you're.
one.
Yes, I know it. Oh, oh.
It's not a
It's not
diary.
a throne. It's a
No, it's a
no. It's
so
a
bad. I'm so sorry, guys.
homage. It's
No.
that's not what it's called. It's ouch. This is
What
really
is
bad.
anyways, but you're like dedicating a place in your house to someone.
Right.
Um and like it's more specific and it's more ornate and detailed, and then like the decorations we have now are kind of like more, I don't know, I guess they're more like intense, and like this the jack-o'-lanterns people decorate now are like way more intense and detailed than they would have been like back then.
Altar.
An altar, thank you. That is the word I was looking for. I said diorama. That is so not the
Oh,
right word.
but I do like a good diorama.
I know. Um, anyways, but so there's one other part of this that I did want to include because I think that this is a very just an interesting practice. So this is a part of the Gaelic tradition. Specifically in parts of Southern Ireland, this is something people would do. Again, I'm really sorry about this pronunciation. A man dressed as a Lair Bon, which is a white mare or a white horse, led children house to house, reciting verses. Some of them were kind of like pagan overtones, and that was exchanged for food. So again, kind of like a trick-or-treating thing. I don't totally know why he was a white horse specifically, but that was what they did. Um, but then in Scotland, youths went house to house uh with masks or painted faces or like costumes and they threatened to do mischief if they were not welcomed. And
Trick.
this is something that happened as late as the 16th century,
Huh?
which is,
Okay.
I think, fascinating that in Scotland they were doing tricks,
Trick or
trick
treating.
or treating, back then. So yeah, just kind of some fun stuff. Um, and there was a there, I'm gonna get this word wrong too, but there were also in Wales there were men who dressed as the gwa- gw- Gwarchods, which I believe were like a specific monster that was like a cultural monster. I don't know. They were considered to be fearsome beasts.
Okay.
But yeah, so they were also, in on the kind of like evolution of trick-or-treating and that kind of stuff too. And the costumes and all of that. So just wanted to make sure I included that because I think that's all like really interesting.
I like the whole white horse thing. Of course, puts me in mind of Taylor Swift, but we'll move on.
Yeah, well, it's like the white horse is interesting because I think it's so like I do love the idea of like just in like a modern context of just like a dad with like a
Dressing up.
bunch of children dressed up as a white horse and
That'd be
then
fun.
like a bunch of little kids and like why is he a white horse? I don't know, but okay.
I also
What
think that
was
in
that
this,
one year?
I would like to see people, if a child comes to the door and says trick or treat, I think you should be allowed to say, okay, do a trick. See what
Yeah,
they say.
that
What do
would
you
be
got for me?
that is true. That is true. I think that the mischief needs to be encouraged
Absolutely. Of
in a
course.
different way.
Is that where the egging of the house came from? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know about that. But so this is this is something that I have kind of in my research, I have some interesting theories about, and this is also something that I have some personal research with because I studied abroad in Australia and I studied abroad in Australia before TikTok was a thing. And so I want to preface it with that because I think that TikTok has changed things a little bit because I think it's made the world a bit smaller and like traditions a little bit different. But I do just and like celebrations a little bit different. But I want to say that when I was there, I was studying there with Australians, with people from the UK, with people from Germany and Amsterdam and America. And these are real people that I know and had conversations with. And I want to make that clear. And they were not like losers, also. Like they were normal people. Anyways, that's just to preface. But so as I said before, so we're going to talk about American influence on Halloween now, if that just
That was not clear
I
that that's
didn't
where you
make
were
that
going.
clear.
Not
No,
at
that
all.
wasn't clear. But just at the start, Puritans of New England strongly opposed to this holiday, so they did not bring this over with them. So America started, we didn't have Halloween, you know? Shocking, I know, because now we're probably the biggest exporter.
Mm.
Um, but then with the massive Irish and Scottish immigration in the 19th century, Halloween became a major holiday in America because, as we've discussed, between the Catholic Christians coming over and then the kind of like Gaelic influence as well, they clearly have like a big Halloween historical presence. But also the Cajun people really took to this holiday. And in Cajun areas, a nocturnal mass was said in cemeteries on Halloween night. Candles that had been blessed were placed on graves, and families sometimes spent their entire night at the graveside. So, along with the Cajun people, a lot of other kind of immigrants who were living with the Irish and Scottish people were kind of like, they're mingling together with them because they're living in these tenement buildings, perhaps, as we recently learned. And they're more likely picking up on these traditions too. They're more likely sharing things. And over time, Halloween grows much more popular within the immigration population in America. And over time, it spreads really heavily to the mass population of America. And over time, consumer culture takes over the Halloween market. And over time, Spirit Halloween takes over any empty real estate property in your area.
And I went there yesterday.
Yes. um, but jokes aside, I think that something really kind of interesting happened because while that was happening here, a good chunk of the rest of the world stopped celebrating Halloween. So while we kind of like got a bunch of immigrants that were like starting to build Halloween into a mainstream holiday here, everywhere else it was dying out. And while our consumer culture kind of was like, oh, we can make a huge profit off of it, everywhere else they were like, this isn't something we can make money from. And I think until recently, when, like I said, TikTok became a huge thing, like from going back to what I said before, when I was in Australia, My US friends and I were like, we want to have a Halloween party. All of my international friends were like, you guys actually do that? Like, we thought that was just like an American movie trope. Like, we didn't think that like we thought that was one of those things that you see in movies that like is a fake thing. Because this is something that we had in conversation a lot of like, are American high schools really like this, or is this like something that's only in movies? Because,
John Hughes.
yeah, some things are like that, some things are not. But we were like, no, like Halloween in the movies is actually that's an accurate thing. We actually went trick-or-treating as kids. We actually dress up in costumes. We actually like get drunk on how like this is actually one of the real things. So they were all like, I don't think I've ever worn a Halloween costume, or I don't think I've ever like they've never done it. So they were all thrilled that we wanted to do that. So it was so fun. Now I think it's become way more popular, especially like in European countries and other like Western countries just because of like I said, TikTok and the way the world works now. Um, but I do think that it kind of like is interesting the way it spread from like them to the immigrants to the mainstream to the to like back to them, which is I don't know. Does that make sense kind of?
Yeah, it's like it left them as it came here, and
Yeah.
now it's gone back or is
Yeah.
going back. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Um, but I'm happy because I love Halloween. Um, so the more people that celebrate, I'm like, great. Um,
That's good, Pebbles. I'm glad that you're happy.
thanks. Um, but I don't know. I think I really enjoyed researching a lot of this stuff. I think it's really cool. I think a lot of the because I personally I really like the concept of a lot of the spirituality stuff behind it. I like the idea of having, you know, these like veils between worlds of like spirit worlds and I don't personally know like what I believe in like as a religious practice or whatever, but I do believe there's stuff out there. And I like the concept of having like times in the year where the veil thins and things are different and things happen. And I think that there's definitely something to be said for that. And I don't know, I like you said, I think there's something like I loved learning about all the kind of like Greek and Roman myths of like those explanations for things. And let's make up gods as like these reasons that like the harvest doesn't happen at this time of the year is because Hades stole the goddess of like harvest's daughter. Like let's just make that the story. Like I think that is such a it's both like incredibly creative on the minds of the people who are like coming up with it, but it's also like really interesting of like the way the human brain works to explain things. And then like I don't know, I just like that as a concept.
I hate to say this, but it
Yeah.
is kind of the earliest form of conspiracy theory.
A little bit, yeah, it is. But I think it's also I think humans need to explain things to themselves, and when they don't have the
Facts,
yeah, or the like even the I mean at that point they didn't have
ability to
the
research and the
resources.
scientific,
Yeah, they didn't have the
yeah,
capacity to do that at that time. So like they needed to come up with something. And I think but I think there's also things that like I like to think of it as like sometimes science is magic. Like we don't think of it as that because we can explain it, but just because you can explain something doesn't mean it's not magical, right? Like so I think that that's sometimes like lost on people is that just because you can explain how something works doesn't mean it's not like exceptional that it happens still, you know? Um, so that's like, I don't know, when people are like, oh, well, ghosts aren't real because like X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, they could, like, you don't know that because we haven't explained that they aren't real, or like, I don't know. I think there's
Well, there's so many
stuff
examples
out
of
there.
things if you go back in history and then people going, well, no, that's impossible. That can't happen. And then
Yeah,
time goes by and, oh, yeah, that is possible. And that it
yeah,
can happen. Um,
yeah,
and, unfortunately, at times we don't believe what is
yeah.
actual fact. So, but I'm not going there today.
Um,
Happy Halloween.
happy Halloween. Um, but yeah, this was, I don't know, I found a lot of this stuff really cool, and I think it's really, I always like to learn where kind of like current stuff comes from, because for me, I was not expecting to learn that trick-or-treating, jack-o'-lanterns, and costumes all came from like really early Christian and Gaelic customs. Like that's crazy to me that like
Yeah, back in Bedrock.
yeah, all the way back where we came from, Dad. We've been doing this for a long time. Anything else you want to tell the people on this Halloween?
No, I hope you have a very happy Halloween and happy Halloween to our many, many listeners. And we do look forward if people want to share some images. We did get some images of past Halloween costumes
Yeah.
on at girl.bcast@gmail.com. Thank you, Cindy. If anybody else would like to share some current or past images of Halloween costumes, we would love to see them,
Yes.
and if you'd like to see the wonderful costumes that we're wearing, and you're only listening to us right now, check us out on YouTube because you can see it all there. Especially whatever is happening in Abby's background with ghosts and random things. I'm not really sure, but the bats fly at me about every 5 or 6 minutes. Kind of, woo, there they are again. Anyway, girldadpcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, I want to see all your Halloween costumes. I love that so much. This is like my favorite day of the year. So excited. Everybody be safe. Uh,
Yabba dabba doo.
and on that note, we will talk to you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, Dad.
Bye, girl.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the episode, follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, rate us, and leave a review.